The next pillar on which Watchdog rests is monitoring. And this is transaction monitoring for transactions that come in actively as we speak. So what does transaction monitoring really let us do? Transaction monitoring lets us define, using a variant of SQL, define very simple queries which effectively play the role of bots. They are bots that monitor what's actively happening on the blockchain and can give us warnings, can issue alerts, they can notify us off-chain, so we can get Slack warnings or Telegram warnings or whatever we want. I personally get emails as well, but I can define dynamic filters on transactions. These are incrementally maintained, so every time I will only be warned about the changes since the last time, if I so select, and I will get a notification whenever this alert fires, or I can define a webhook and I can trigger any follow-up service based on that. So let's get very quickly an idea of our variant of SQL and what kinds of things we have defined. I have a very simple query here, TC recipients. This is basically all the accounts that have gotten funds from Tornado Cash. And in the duration here, I put 90 days. And you can see the SQL definition of this query. In fact, I materialize this query, I make it a permanent table, and I build other queries on top of that. So as you can see, it's basically selection projection statements in SQL. It just says, I want the recipient from Tornado Cash withdrawals, and I want the block number. And where do I get those? What is Tornado Cash withdrawals? Tornado Cash withdrawals is the table transaction detail. This is the lowest level, most detailed table on our database. And over that transaction detail, I ask that the inputs, the function called in this transaction is a withdraw function with this signature. And in fact, we will see soon that we have great autocomplete support. So when you write a signature on transaction detail, you get a lot of help defining those filters. I named this Tornado Cash withdrawal, and I also have the filter that says the to address in Tornado Cash withdrawals is the Tornado Cash address. And I define all this as Tornado Cash recipients. I have hardwired in the query right now that this is for the last 90 days. Actually, I can remove that. And if I remove that, I can set the duration, say, to be the last 3 days. And I can run the query again. Based on this query, we can build a lot of other functionalities. So for instance, we can say, I want all the Tornado Cash recipients that interact with, say, the Aave protocol. This is a query here. We have defined many public queries, so you can get lots of examples to start from. I, for instance, get notifications every day for this query. Well, not every day, every couple of hours typically, that says, I want to get notified every time there's a movement of more than 5 million out of a defined protocol in my system, except for Maker, Uniswap v3, and Compound, because I don't want to get too many notifications. But I get notifications for all these conditions, and there's a lot of richness. There's a lot you can build on. Now, for every filter, you can set the duration. You can set the alert screen and how exactly you will be getting alerts, whether to materialize the query as a table and build on top of that other queries, whether you actually incrementalize a query, whether it's public or private, et cetera, et cetera. And if you want to have a quick look at our tables, like what's the vocabulary for defining these queries, you can see that our database defines a set of common tables here. And for every network, we have another set of tables, and primarily the lowest level table is transaction detail, although there is good support for it to help you when you type in, when you match various columns of that table. you can see that there's a ton of detail in transaction detail. You can match on the program counter of the caller, on gas used, maximum gas or gas used, and of course, block number, call value, whether the transaction is committed, the VM step. You can define nested transactions, etc. Most likely, you will not work with a transaction detail table. You may work with higher level tables, such as token allowance, token balance, etc. So for instance, here in this query, the movement of money out of protocol, I'm using here a macro, I'm using a table token ledger. And token ledger here is actually giving me a way to talk about the token address that has changed and about the amount that has changed in there. So let's see exactly how we do this. So we do a selection of the transaction, and we use a macro to USD value from t.value delta, and t is my token ledger. So value delta is what I'm reading from inside the token ledger, and it's this column here. And at the same time, I'm reading the token address, and I'm passing this on to a macro to USD value, and I'm getting the US dollar value of the delta of the change in the token ledger for that token address. Now, all of this you can see a lot more of, and it's actually a great excuse to introduce our documentation. So I clicked on Docs